Professor, what is this new criticism?
It's a more refined and academic understanding of the modernist theory, one that comes from the American schools, especially the American South.
Sounds pretty conservative. It still believes that the text is everything, yes?
Absolutely. As I have already described, we cannot trust the reader's feelings about art. Personal emotions are wild cards, unpredictable and obviously subjective. If we relied upon emotions, we may as well give up on understanding the word art.
But I sometimes feel like art is personal. Isn't the only reason for art to express emotions? To feel emotions?
It's unfortunate that popular culture has taught us this. It makes it more difficult for you to set aside these prejudices. Listen, many experiences in life give us emotions. Good chili fries, a romantic breakup, even online learning. That doesn't make any of them art.
Okay, so art or literature is when a poem produces emotions, not chili fries.
I don't disagree that emotions are within literature, but the new critics deny that the emotions which come from readers are the point of the poem. Feel what you want. Just don't call it the point of the poem.
But the point of art, for me, is to feel something.
And let art do that. But the meaning of art, the meaning of the poem, must remain in the poem. If the meaning was only somehow in your readerly head, then we might as well give you a blank piece of paper to read.
Your argument keeps using extreme examples. Can't we say that a good poem has imagery that produces different emotions in different readers?
Only if you wish to engage in fallacy.
What do you mean?
The affective fallacy is this weird belief that somehow the point of poetry is the feeling we have about it. It comes from the idea that poetry's subject is often emotion, and that good poetry speaks powerful truths. And so we take poetry personally. This is as it should be, but that does not mean that our personal feelings may likewise be transported onto the poem. The meaning of the poem is the meaning of the poem. Literature is an artifact, an object which we can examine precisely like any other object in the world.
But the writer has an idea that he wants in the poem. What if that's different from what you find?
It might be, but now you are living in a new contradiction. You cannot argue that the meaning of the poem is in the reader and now turn around and say it is in the writer.
I'm just trying to understand how you can dismiss the reader and the writer. They are part of the relationship we have with the poem.
True, but the meaning of the poem is separate from both. Take the writer, for instance. Let us take this one step at a time, okay?
Okay.
I think you and I can agree that a text is created by the author's ideas. The ideas in the poem are not random.
Of course, every writer wants to tell a story or relate an idea.
Good. So how do we know that writer's idea? It was either 1, successfully communicated in the poem, or 2, it was not successfully communicated.
Yes, that makes sense.
If it was successful, then you do not have to ask the author, do you? We can find the meaning in the poem.
But
remember, we have to work with the premise that the reader is educated. He knows how to read carefully and analyze the work.
Oh. Okay. But what if the intention was not successfully put in the poem? Don't we have to look at writer intention then?
Yeah. Let's set aside the fact that most authors are dead or otherwise not reachable. But imagine what this means if we could speak to him directly. He would have to explain his work, which means that the idea we sought was not there to be found. In fact, the poem meant something else.
So we misunderstood it.
No, the writer failed to write it. If the writer's intention and the poem's meaning are different, what do we say? Intention is irrelevant.
But sometimes, if we understand the author better, we can learn more about what is in the poem.
Again, and for the same reasons, no. There is nothing the author's life can tell you that is not already in the poem.
Poems are, subjective. They are meant to be open and full of possibilities.
But a moment ago, you said that writers want to communicate a particular idea or intent. Now you are saying the meaning is open. Once again, your beliefs are full of contradictions. This is the problem if you have not thought this through. Beliefs, feelings are contradictory, false, full of fallacious thinking. Modernism and the new criticism work to correct these flaws.
I don't like thinking that my thinking is flawed.
Of course you do not. But rather than say art should be open, let us try it this way. Judging a poem should be like looking at a machine. The machine must work. If it works, we know the intention or purpose of the machine. If the poem is written well, or the machine is designed well, then all the parts work together to create that effect.
No! Now you are saying that art is a machine?
Figuratively, yes. In function, yes. Literally, no.
So what happens when I feel something from this machine? Is that even possible anymore once you've killed my love of art?
I hope that is not the case. I love art too. I love it so much that we have designed a philosophy, a theory which defends its meaning from lazy readers and critics. Now, finally, we know what art means, and we have a sound method for understanding that meaning.
But what about my feelings?
The meaning you achieve from a poem can be personal. That's fine. But the important point is that the emotion is coming from the poem, from the speaker of the poem, not the author.
But the speaker and the author are the same, aren't they?
Nonsense. Authors are different from the characters they create who speak the words of the poem. Speakers are the text. If you are trying to get back to the author again, this is fallacy. We call it the intentional fallacy.
So how do I find this perfect single meaning in the poem? What if mine is different from someone else's?
If that happens, then that means one of you is not as careful a reader as the other, probably. The educated critic analyzes every element of the text closely to assemble a meaning, and that meaning is thick, not simple.
But I don't understand, Headmaster. How will I know that I have the meaning right?
Just like I've always told you, work with others to test each other's interpretations while you train. Don't just learn what the names of techniques are. Learn how these techniques create meaningful effects. Once you assemble these, you start to see patterns of meaning within a poem.
But what if my patterns of meaning are different from someone else's? And what if they are good readers too?
Contradictions often aren't conflicts. They are usually part of the work's deeper themes. Multiple meanings create ambiguities to be explored.
That sounds like a clever and convenient answer, Professor. What do you mean by that?
You yourself said that literature is powerful, personal, emotional. None of these words suggest anything simple about meaning. You are the one who wanted to argue that art is special and that you were anxious that I would somehow drain it of life.
Professor Arnold said you were a literary vampire.
He is wrong. What modernists and new critics do is breathe the full life into poetry by truly studying and understanding its depths. It's kind of silly to suggest that poetry should be so important to a reader and then tell me that its meanings are also mere simple claims and theme statements, yes?
Themes are the message of the work.
Yes, in part. But it is a sad education that told you that themes are merely single sentences which name a topical idea. Love is not a theme. Neither is broken love. Neither is the sadness from a broken love. These are merely topics, simple announcements of a general area of talk. Humans and human experience are vastly thicker.
Does all literature speak complex ideas?
I think you need to give literary classics credit, and give more credit to the authors you were defending earlier. If humans are complex, the art that they produce at its finest must be full of ambiguities, paradoxes, tensions, and of course, ironies. These are all the qualities that make us human, and so they must be in the art as well.
I thought you said art was a machine.
No, I said that judging art was like judging a machine. Art itself, whether it is poetry or music or dance or painting, is full of life's most complex experiences, and it deserves our careful attention and protection, not merely empty admiration.
I don't think I'm just a fangirl for Stephen King.
No, but you also haven't considered his work as rigorously as you might.
Can a horror novel be classic art?
Of course. And now, this point may bother you, but consider it this way. The actual content of literature is unimportant. What is truly important is how well that literature has been rendered, crafted, to reveal the complexity of our civilization or humanity. It doesn't matter what the story or plot is actually about in this case.
You're losing me here.
Listen, we've established that paradoxes, ironies, and tensions are part of the complexity of literary art. We find these through closely examining the images, the diction, and other techniques. The real question of a piece of literature, and by this I mean the real meaning of it, is found in the form of these tensions, these deeper meanings.
You're saying that stories are not about the plot, but about themes.
Good. And now, at last, you have arrived at the definition of literary art instead of a defense of popular work. Literature, real literature, finds its meaning in the deeper tensions and contradictions between the multiple interpretations you were worried about earlier. Multiple interpretations from the text do not show the error of the reader or the text. They show that the text has deeper levels to explore, that its meaning is something far more profound than the plot. Popular literature, like Stephen King, simply does not go there.
What about King's Gunslinger series? In the prologue, he says he felt, when writing it, that he had a kind of steam shovel and was digging up something deep.
This was his intention, and you now know that reasoning this way is the intentional fallacy. Liking the series of books is the affective fallacy, and if you now summarize the story for me, you commit the heresy of the paraphrase.
Now what I know is to go and look at the text myself to see if King was right. If I find layers of meanings within his images, if I uncover the paradoxes of the human experience between the varied interpretations I discover, I will know that it is not a mere roller coaster ride, but that it's something special. A masterpiece of literary art. A classic.
And you will be a new critic. You learn quickly, Willie. And the best part, you will understand more fully how this work speaks to you and why. The meaning which is personal to you is one you will be able to defend with reason and appreciate more powerfully than ever.
I understand.
And you will understand more by May when you take the College Board's AP exam. You will do well. I know it.
Thanks, Professor.